Hi, Dr. Megan Brining here. Tonight we're going to talk about how to manage your postpartum hormones. And I'm really excited to talk about this because this is so relevant for so many women that have a baby. And I don't find that people's traditional doctors talk about this. Hi, everyone. I work with a variety of women who are in and out of different stages of life, whether they're having babies or postpartum, they're many years postpartum. And so no matter if you are about to have a baby or thinking about having a baby, or you are in that postpartum time frame, this information is for you because you need to be prepared for what is going to happen. So I see a couple of almost new mamas joining, so welcome and congratulations. I'm so pumped for you all. But I want to talk about, let's start talking about kind of what happens hormonally with baby and during labor. So estrogen and progesterone are players, oxytocin, prolactin, and relaxin are players. So are your endorphins and your cortisol levels. So the way that I like to think about labor is that it is the most stressful, physiologically normal thing that your body is going to do as a woman. As in, our bodies are designed to have babies as women. So even though it's stressful for the body is designed to do this and it knows how to do this. But there are certain things that happen with our hormones in this time frame that end up, leading to things like postpartum depression or baby blues, anxiety, difficulty after baby. So I want to describe what happens kind of around the birth time, and then we'll talk about some things that we can do for it. So during labor, you're going through this huge physical feat. And I'm looking at my notes over here for those of you that are following along, so I stay on track. But during labor, your hormones, especially your cortisol and your endorphins, are going to go up significantly because number one, labor is stressful. Number two, you're essentially, experiencing a rush because kind of like when you go out on a run or you have a really hard strength training workout, similar things happen when you are actually having the baby and pushing the baby out. And those hormones help us deal with the fact that we are going through often a large amount of pain that's atypical, and we're doing something that's very stressful. So those hormones actually help us get through the labor, but cortisol and endorphins are two types of hormones that essentially go up extremely during labor, but then they come down very quickly after. And so what a lot of women experience in the couple hours after labor is that, maybe they're feeling some of that bonding hormone with the baby, and I'll talk about that in a second. But it's also a big stress drop off, and it's a big endorphin drop off. Kind of like when you were in college, and I'm going to shut my window real quick. I have neighbor dogs that make lots of noise. Kind of like when you're in college and you are studying for finals week and you're super stressed about it and you're going, and you're trying to get all this stuff done. And then you do your finals week and then you go home for a break. And then your body is just like, oh, okay, I can relax. Here's some sickness. Here's, sleeping for several hours. Here's like you on the couch being exhausted. That's because what happens during that time frame is that cortisol is high and then cortisol comes down. So we lose that sense of focus, that drive, and that ability to stay alert. And so that plays into mood postpartum, because what tends to happen a couple hours after labor is everything goes down. So cortisol and endorphins are high during labor and then they go down. And then when you're making the baby, when you're pregnant, your estrogen and your progesterone are very high, which we need that to make the baby. But when you have the baby and you deliver the placenta, it's probably about 3 hours after birth, those levels plummet. And so if you ladies have ever experienced a period, which most of us have, you understand when you are about to get your period, sometimes you feel irritable, sometimes you feel like crying, sometimes you're emotional, sometimes, your boobs hurt or you're getting headaches, sometimes you have acne, and all of those things can happen after birth as well. But because estrogen, progesterone drop significantly after baby, that tends to affect mood because estrogen helps give us, estrogen and serotonin are buddies. And so mood can often go down after birth just because of the cortisol up and down and the endorphin up and down, but also because we don't have those female hormones in the background actually supporting our mood. So that's one thing that tends to happen. But you also have some hormones that go up after labor. So prolactin, which is how you make your milk, and then oxytocin, which oxytocin is the bonding hormone. It's the love hormone. It's how you bond with your partner. It's how you bond with the baby. But it's also important for uterine contractions. So like when you start labor, oxytocin is working. But postpartum, when your uterus is starting to gradually return to its normal shape, and it's doing that contracting process to get there, oxytocin is still around and is often high because you've just birthed this baby that you've been waiting for, and you're having the hormone drop off plus the rush of oxytocin, so you are very wrapped up in your baby and you're experiencing those bonding feelings that oxytocin can help us with. But oxytocin is also responsible for that contractile feeling that women often experience, several weeks post-labor. So for those of you gals that are just about to have a baby, one thing that is really common as your uterus is kind of getting back to its normal size is that the uterus will have contractions, and women will often find these to be a little bit disconcerting after birth because they think, oh, well, I went through labor and I had the baby, and now the baby's here and we're at home and we're, relaxing as much as we can and we're focusing on baby and mom's health. And you're sitting here thinking like, oh my gosh, why is my uterus still contracting? And some of that is because, if you're breastfeeding your baby and you're bonding with your baby, you're still going to be making that oxytocin, and your body's going to be making that oxytocin anyways to help with the uterine contractions to put it back to its normal size. But nobody ever tells women that that's normal. You're going to experience uterine contractions for several weeks after baby, but sometimes it's slightly painful, sometimes it's really uncomfortable, sometimes it doesn't bother women. It'll all kind of depend, what your body is up to. But definitely expect for your uterus to, it's not like you birth the baby and then uterus just kind of magically goes back to its shape. It takes some time, and that oxytocin is what helps your uterus do that. But often women will have symptoms and sensations of that type of contraction. So prolactin and oxytocin go up after baby. And I'm talking about mood a lot because these hormones affect mood. We're going to talk about the actual hormonal piece that these hormones affect, things like fatigue and hair shedding and sleep issues and acne. But a lot of them have an effect on mood, especially prolactin, because high prolactin tends to actually lower dopamine. And dopamine is that pleasure-seeking, I'm happy, I'm healthy hormone. And, if you've met anybody that's low dopamine, they tend to be fairly flat. They don't have, much drive. They're not, necessarily seeking out enjoyable activities. They tend to be more passive, and often what women will experience after baby is this intense feeling like they need to be with baby, and often libido kind of goes out the window at that point. And part of that is purely physiological, because as your prolactin goes up to help your milk come in, your dopamine is going to go down. And I think this is a little bit of, totally designed type of compensation that the body has, because obviously if you have just had a baby, your body's not going to be thinking, oh my gosh, let's get pregnant, let's nourish another life, because you just had your baby and your body's not responsible for caring for and taking care of that baby. So the low libido piece tends to kind of hit women out of left field, because they're like, okay, yeah, I mean, I understand I just had a baby and I'm focusing on baby. But I think what I tend to hear from women a lot is that they don't expect how long the low libido will last. I will talk about, what's normal and what's not in a little bit, but I would expect libido to be low for you postpartum ladies for a little bit longer than you would expect. And that's because of the prolactin. Let's see, we talked about endorphins. And the other thing I would want to mention is thyroid hormone. So your thyroid hormone levels can change postpartum. They can change drastically, they can change minimally, they might not change at all, but you should definitely have blood work at your 6-week appointment to check your thyroid hormones. And sometimes I'll even do it earlier for women, especially if they're really struggling, like if they're having a lot of symptoms or they have a history of thyroid imbalance. But all of the hormones play together. If you've been listening to me at all, it's, it's like a concert. You need the conductor, you need the violinist, you need the pianist, you need the drummer, you need all of them to be working appropriately for the whole system to work. So if thyroid is low, then it's going to affect things like your libido, like your hair growth, or I should say your hair loss, or the ability of your hair to be thick. It's going to affect fatigue level. It's going to affect your bowel movements. And one common thing that I see with women postpartum is that the stress of pregnancy can actually trigger the immune system to create antibodies against your thyroid. And so when this happens, the diagnosis is typically Hashimoto's thyroiditis, which is an inflammation of the thyroid due to an autoimmune attack. And this is easily diagnosed with blood work, but it's super, super common in women, but also women that are postpartum. So, ladies, if you are really fatigued, your bowels aren't moving, you've got dry skin, your hormones aren't coming back like you think they are, you're losing more hair, you're losing the outer third of your eyebrows, you have any neck tenderness or hoarseness, definitely get your thyroid checked. But regardless, all women should be getting their blood work at least their 6-week appointment. And 6 weeks might be a little bit too long for you. I think there's this idea, and I should look this up. I don't know where the 6-week mark or why the 6-week mark in medicine has been established. But typically women, once they have the baby, they will follow up with their provider in 6 weeks. But what I tend to see with the women that I work with is that it's good to check in with a provider sooner. And the reason why is because, say you're having all of this hormone drop off and you're experiencing the baby blues and you're really struggling. This is a time that we need to actually intervene and get you some help, because 6 weeks when you have a newborn is a really long time to not be supported. So if things aren't working, we need to get this shifted pretty quickly. So I would definitely recommend getting your thyroid checked postpartum, at least the 6-week mark. If you are predisposed to having thyroid issues or already have a thyroid issue, get it checked sooner. The other thing that some women don't know is that when you have the baby, you secrete this hormone called relaxin. And relaxin is awesome because it helps your tendons and your ligaments to relax, which allows your pelvis to open a little bit, especially at that pubic symphysis area, which is in the front of your pelvis. And that's really important to let the baby's head go through the shoulders to actually birth the baby. But your relaxin levels are still a bit elevated, and they come down over time. But relaxin doesn't just affect your pelvic region, it affects all the other bones and joints in your body. So some women have this sensation like they can't handle the activity like they used to, or their joints feel really lax, or they feel uber flexible, or say you're a yogi and you want to get on the mat and do some poses, you might not feel as secure as you used to be. So just keep that in mind as you're recovering, that your relaxin levels need to come down over time. So if you're starting to do some exercise, especially gentle exercise is recommended if you can handle it postpartum. If you're starting to do that and you're not really feeling great, give yourself a little bit more time to heal. So is everybody tracking with me? Hoping this makes sense. So I'm just going to recap all of that. So we have cortisol that goes up during labor. and then drops. And then we have endorphins that go up during labor and then drop. We have estrogen and progesterone that are dropping as soon as you deliver the baby and deliver the placenta. We have prolactin for milk production that's going up. We're having oxytocin, which is bonding and uterine contractions, going up. We have dopamine going down because prolactin is going up, and they antagonize each other in the body. So endorphins are going down, thyroid is sometimes changing, and relaxin levels are high around the birth, and they're slowly going down. So all of that can lead to mood changes, which we're going to talk about. But I want to give you guys a list of things that you can think about for a hormone imbalance postpartum. But before I get to this list, I want to impress upon all of you gals that are going to have a baby soon or in the future that we need to give ourselves more time after baby to recover. There's this idea that, once you hit the 6-week mark, you're going to be ready for exercise. You're going to be ready to go on long walks. You're going to be ready for sex. You're going to, return to your job. Well, 6 weeks is a little early for job, but that's typically 3 months. But you're going to return to whatever daily activities you tend to do. And that's just not true. I mean, the 6-week mark is really, I feel like it's pretty arbitrarily picked. And especially if you are a woman that has had any sort of complications, whether it's a C-section, which is a whole other topic, or whether you have had a vaginal birth that has been complicated by any sort of tearing, that is a lot of recovery that your body has to do. Plus you are fully nourishing this new life, assuming that you're breastfeeding. So and plus you've just had a total identity shift. You've become a mom. You have, hopefully, if your oxytocin is kicking in properly, you have an insane amount of connection and love for this new being, and you are fully invested in that. And the women that I talk to that go through this shift, it's very profound, and we need to honor that. And not everybody shifts in the same way when it comes to motherhood. So some people, they may not feel as bonded to their baby, or they're having a really hard time with how their bodies look or function, or they're having a lot of different symptoms. So we need to give ourselves more grace when we are recovering postpartum. And I'm going to talk about that in depth. I have, I think 8 points here that are things that can help you recover postpartum, and things to think about so that you actually are going to feel well and you're going to feel capable for postpartum. So we need to give ourselves longer than we think to recover. Also, when it comes to weight and returning back to your normal weight or returning back to a new normal weight, I usually recommend that women give themselves 6 months to a year. So there's a pressure to lose the baby weight, get body back, and we just need to throw that out the window because your body has completely changed, your priorities have changed, and the hormone piece affects the weight and affects how your body is going to bounce back. And there's no way to tell whether you are going to be great postpartum or whether you're not. One thing that can kind of help determine that is by talking to the women in your family, especially women in your direct line, like your mom, possibly your maternal aunts, your grandmother, any sisters. The way that they dealt with pregnancy and childbirth usually reflects some amount of what you will experience. So if they had easy pregnancies and easy births and they felt pretty good postpartum, then that bodes well for you. But we are all different, so we have to give ourselves time. So if you are sitting here thinking like, oh gosh, what is postpartum going to be like? Give yourself grace, because there's so much pressure to be all, do it all, feel it all, and excel at it all, and it's just rubbish. We need to let that go. So give yourself permission to do that. So let's talk about some signs of hormone imbalance, and I'll talk a little bit about that, and then I'll get to my list of 8 things. So signs of hormone imbalance postpartum. So I talked a lot about mood, and I want to harp on anxiety and depression postpartum anxiety and postpartum depression. They both can occur simultaneously. You can have one or the other, and they're often misdiagnosed or missed totally. So when it comes to the hormones, I was talking about how some drop off and how some go up. And the most common thing that women experience is, I call it like the 3-day doldrums, or like the 3-day drop off. So you have your baby, and then about 3 days later, that's generally when all of the hormones that were high have come like crashing down. So if you are a mess on day like 3 to 6 and even up to a week after, you're probably pretty normal. So don't go crazy in your head about thinking like, oh no, I'm gonna have postpartum depression, or I'm gonna have postpartum anxiety. Just ride the wave a little bit, give your body some time to adjust, and then see how you feel in a week, see how you feel in 2 weeks. If you have symptoms of anxiety and depression that are severe, that they're affecting your ability to care for the baby, interact with your partner, interact with yourself, take care of yourself. If you're having suicidal thoughts, if you're so anxious that it's really hard to relax and just even sit there and breastfeed the baby, then that is a sign that things are not normal. So if your mood, whether you tend towards anxiety or tend towards depression, or you experience both, if your mood does not really start to pick up, usually I tell women about week 3, sometimes week 2, then I would definitely talk to a provider about it. Because if you're at week 3 and you're not seeing any improvement, then it's possible that you actually have true postpartum anxiety or postpartum depression, and we need to give you the care that you deserve to help you deal with that. Because the women that I have talked to that deal with this, it is completely life-changing, and it really affects the ability to take care of the baby. And baby depends on you, mama. So we need to get you the care that you need. And I know this is so easy, especially when you're focused on baby, but it's so easy to minimize this and say, I'll go into my provider next week. Sometimes what I recommend for women that kind of tend towards anxiety or depression is to, make a telehealth appointment or make a phone call or go in and see your OB at that 3-week mark, just so that you have like some built-in support, so that you have somebody to talk to in case things don't go as you've planned, or you're having an increase in symptoms. Because the point is that we can treat it. And I treat things naturopathically, so I use a lot of different nutrition tricks, a lot of different nutrient tricks. Herbs are awesome postpartum, and I'm going to talk about those in a second. Or in a couple minutes, but it can really, really help. So I know a lot of people tend to shy away from talking about that with their provider because they don't want to go on medications and they feel like that's the only option. And if you're feeling that way, definitely seek out a women's health, functional medicine provider, or naturopathic doctor in your area, because chances are we have some tips for you. So if you don't want to get on medication, we can still help. So that's my plug for that. So we're talking about signs of hormone imbalance postpartum. So number 1, anxiety and depression because of that 3-day drop off. So plan to be in the dumps on day 3. Don't plan anything, you guys, for at least the first 3 weeks. Those of you that have already had babies, you know this, but don't plan anything in the first 3 weeks, and often the first 6 weeks, sometimes to 3 months, depending on the person. Take some pressure off yourself. The other thing would be low libido. And we talked about that a little bit at the beginning. Low libido is often a cause of your prolactin going up. That suppresses dopamine, and that changes your sex drive. But also that paired with the fact that your estrogen and your progesterone have just taken a huge hit. They've totally dropped off. Most women don't have a lot of cha-cha post-baby, and part of that is normal. But I would say for most of this postpartum, these symptoms, if you're not significantly better, with the exception of a couple of these things, but if I'm going to speak specifically about libido, if you're not feeling any sort of cha-cha, sexiness, normalcy when it comes to, your drive to have sex in about 6 months, then I would definitely possibly get some hormone testing, talk to your provider, see if there are some specific reasons why that's not bouncing back for you. I actually did a video on this last week of common reasons why libido is often low for people. So find the root cause and treat it. Go back to that video and give it a watch. It's not postpartum related, but it's applicable to anybody that has low libido. Signs of hormone imbalance postpartum: weight gain or weight loss. That's an issue about 1 year after baby. So I was just talking about how we need to wait, we need to wait on the weight to normalize. And I don't have women think about their weight for at least the first 6 months, sometimes up to a year, depending on the person and what their history is like. Often breastfeeding will help a woman with her hormones, and so weight management is a little bit easier, but that's not always the case. Some women that are feeding their babies formula because they can't breastfeed for whatever reason, sometimes they bounce back fine as well. But the point is that your body is going through a huge hormone transition that's going to drastically affect what your body does with its weight. So it's best not to even think about that, even though that's hard, because we want as much of our body back. We want as much of a new normal established as possible. But try to wait for that and give yourself a lot of grace, because you just had a total paradigm shift. Signs of hormone imbalance: chronic fatigue. So if you have fatigue that is just not touchable, you're getting your sleep, you're having a doula come over and help you sleep, you're having help from the family, you're taking naps with the baby, you're getting your 8 to 10 hours, and you're not improving, that's a sign you should probably get that checked out. That could be a thyroid imbalance, that could be an adrenal dysfunction, it could be something else going wrong in your blood work. So, some fatigue postpartum is normal, because you're probably going to be sleep deprived, because baby needs to be fed on a really consistent schedule every couple of hours, especially when they're first born. And so it's normal to be a little bleary-eyed, especially for the first 6 weeks or when baby is going through a growth spurt. But chronically fatigued, where you just really can't get anything done, that's a problem. Everybody's favorite, hair loss. So if you have extreme hair shedding that continues after the 3 or the 6 month mark after birth, then get some blood work and talk to a provider about this. After any sort of stressful event, there's a normal phenomenon called telogen effluvium, which is when you lose that growth cycle of hair because of the stress. And that I see happen all of the time with people that have regular amounts of stressful events in their life, but it's super, super common postpartum. So, but it happens, anywhere from 3 to 6 months after. So some women see a big postpartum hair fallout at the 3 month mark. Sometimes they see it more closer to the 6 or somewhere in between. So expect that amount of hair loss, and I promise you won't go bald. I promise it will come back, but your body is now adjusting to new levels of hormones and that huge cortisol output that you had during labor. So if the hair shedding is lasting really consistently, longer than 6 months, talk about it with someone. Night sweats that last longer than about a month postpartum. And a month is not a hard and fast rule. It's about the time frame that I think about for the women that I work with, because what happens when your hormones drop, especially your estrogen and your progesterone, is your estrogen really affects your hypothalamus, which is your thermoregulatory center that manages your temperature. And so when it's kind of like menopause, when your estrogen drops, that makes the brain freak out and your temperature gets kind of off and you get a hot flash. Those signals get kind of messed up in the body. So if you ever have a drop off of estrogen or you are ever estrogen deficient, then women will tend to get night sweats because of that effect on the brain. Very, very normal. And because you're going from a high estrogen state to a low estrogen state after birth, some women have some night sweats, or they have some sweating during the day, or they're just kind of sweaty in general. And that's pretty normal, but things, even though women will stay pretty low hormone until the return of fertility, which I'll talk about in a little bit, you shouldn't you shouldn't get them month after month after month after month postpartum. So keep an eye on that. Another thing is acne. So postpartum acne is actually really common. And this happens in women, whether you've had acne before or whether you're a person that's never had pimples or never had any sort of acne. And it's usually because your hormones were super high, and what essentially happened is that they were so high, and then you had this really stressful event, and all of the hormones, that hormone all up and down show, has just totally overwhelmed your liver, and you are detoxing all of these hormones out of your system. And it's kind of like if you guys have ever been on a run, doing like a 5K or 10K or a marathon or however crazy long you run, and there's a bottleneck where there's like this really small bridge and everybody's trying to run through the bridge. That's kind of like what happens with your hormones in your liver when you're postpartum. You have all of these hormones in the blood that need to get shuttled out of your system, but your liver is that little small bridge, and it's like, I can only handle so much at a time. And so when things back up, then you tend to get acne. It's actually really common for babies to get acne too, because they're exposed to hormone changes from mom with birth. So if your baby has acne, don't worry about it, it will clear up. If you have acne, don't worry about it, it will clear up. But the acne for mom should resolve in about 6 weeks. If it's still a little tricky, I would definitely talk to a provider about it. I'm going to talk about some liver supportive things to help that bottleneck effect. And then if you have any sort of dizziness, lightheadedness, or sleep issues, those can all be a sign that your adrenal glands need some support. Like I was talking about before, with all of the cortisol rush that you have when you're having a baby and how stressful it is, that can end up leaving you depleted and not have the ability to really have a great adrenal hormone response. So sometimes sleep, you're waking up in the middle of the night, you're hungry at weird times, you're really tired in the morning, your energy's all over the place, you're tanking at 3 p.m. But also if you're, sitting down like I am and then you stand up to get off the couch or to go up and get something, or you're laying down and you stand up and you feel really lightheaded, that can be a sign that your adrenal glands aren't functioning well either, that you need more electrolytes, or even that you could be iron deficient. And all those things we can check postpartum. So have your thyroid panel on your postpartum blood work, have your iron panel postpartum blood work at that 6 week mark. So those are some of the top signs of hormone imbalance postpartum. I want to talk about now what we can do about it. So the first thing, surprise, surprise, that I start with women that are postpartum is nutrition. So this is a time where your priorities shift a lot, because all of a sudden you're on the back burner and you're trying to give everything to baby. And the cool thing is that you have a lot of nutrients on board, but when you've already gone through pregnancy and you've built this little tiny human from scratch, you have way less nutrients on board than any other time in your life. So this is not the time diet-wise, I should say, to skimp on calories, to restrict certain food groups, to do a food allergy test and do an elimination diet. This is not a time to, do major experimentations with diet, especially initially when milk is coming in, because we need a certain amount of calories and fluid to increase and nourish breast milk and make healthy baby milk for the baby. So we need to keep fluids up, and we need to make sure that we're eating sometimes about 500 calories extra per day. If you guys have ever had a baby, or a woman postpartum, you know that breastfeeding is like the hunger train. You're always hungry. So have a snack on hand all the time. I always have women put like little chunks of cheese, if they can have dairy, at their bedside table at night, or a little thing of almonds or cashews or whatever nut floats your boat. I personally would probably pick macadamia nuts and walnuts because those are my favorite. But have something on your nightstand at night, so when you wake up in the middle of the night, baby's not crying, your partner doesn't need anything, and you're just waking up because of low blood sugar, you can actually take some of those snacks and not even get out of bed and just roll over and go right back to sleep. So moms, you need to make sure calories are up and eat a balanced diet. Eat a little bit of everything. Have protein at meals. Have fats at meals. Have carbs. Don't shy away from anything. Keep it as balanced as possible. And that will really, really help. Because we need high quality fats and proteins to make some really awesome breast milk for the baby. So don't miss out on those. And always have a snack close by. I'll talk about nutrition in a little bit again, but those are some main points. The other thing that you can do is sleep. And I know it's kind of ironic for me to tell you to sleep when you're postpartum or you're about to be postpartum, because you're like, okay, well, I haven't been sleeping already because my belly is so big and now I have a baby to nourish. But this is the time to, enlist help. Enlist help of family members if they live close by, have somebody fly in and help you. You can even hire a doula to take some of the night shifts. So even if you hire a doula or have your midwife or whoever your support system is come over and do 2 nights a week or 3 nights a week or even 1 night a week, that's going to make just help you feel so much better, you and your partner, for sleep, and it's going to really decrease your sleep debt. So if you don't have family around, hire some help. There are doulas, there are I don't know necessarily what they're called. I think they go just by doula. I want to say something. It's kind of like a night nurse, someone that comes and just does the night shift with you. The other thing is, if you can, have the people that are helping you do stuff for you when the baby is napping so you can go take a nap as well. I know that's not always easy, but if you have some help around, then you don't have to take that time when the baby's napping to do anything. Delegate those tasks, and that will go a long way. The other thing would be to support your adrenal glands. So we've talked a lot about how hormones are all topsy-turvy, but one big thing that happens is that cortisol goes high during birth and then it crashes. So then what happens is that you tend to be lack of sleep, maybe you're not eating great, maybe your schedule's all over the place for the first time in a long time, and your adrenal glands generally are just not functioning very well. So, because you just went through the most stressful, normal, physiological thing that's going to happen through you. So it's going to happen to you. So the cortisol drops off, and then we don't have that adrenal support to help us with our energy, to help us have regular sleep and circadian rhythm. So I like to support the adrenal glands a couple of different ways. Even if you're breastfeeding, you can take multiple herbs. There are many herbs that are safe in lactation, which is awesome. I'll talk about some of those. So I'll often do a combo of different nervines that are safe in pregnancy and also some adaptogens that are safe in pregnancy. And then I'll often use something called phosphatidylcholine, which is kind of like a fatty acid, but it helps, I should say phosphatidylserine. They're different. Phosphatidylserine, because it helps to nourish the adrenal glands, and they use that lipid often when they're making their hormones. And it's also very calming, and it helps to kind of modulate your cortisol. So I love that supplement, and it's safe when you're breastfeeding. It's a great way to support your adrenal glands without getting too fancy, but it really, really works. So if you're struggling with sleep, feeling all over the place, irritability, energy dips, blood sugar problems, phosphatidylserine is really great. I'll often do a tea with women postpartum that will have some nervines and adaptogens. So some of my favorite nervines would be chamomile, passion flower, melissa, lavender, Avena sativa. Those are all awesome. You can do a cold steep of that, or you can do a warm to a cold steep. You can steep it however you want. It's delicious. And then if we want to put some adaptogens in there to help support the adrenals as well, because nervines kind of work on the whole nervous system, which the adrenal glands are a part of, but the adrenal glands are they have other functions as well. So eleuthero, licorice, schizandra, those are 3 of my favorites that are all safe in lactation and breastfeeding. So really, really helpful. You can combine them in a tea. You can do tinctures if you want to. You can do capsules if you want to. I really like to do some nourishing teas postpartum, because when you're postpartum, you need to drink a lot of fluids to keep up your milk supply. And if you haven't experienced this, trust me, buy a really big water bottle and always make sure you have a drink close by, because you will be thirsty and you will need it for your milk. So I like to do nourishing teas, nervines, adaptogens, whatever we need to help essentially hit all the bases. The other thing that I want to talk about is, one thing that I wanted to mention tonight is, so we know about all the topsy-turviness of hormones postpartum that we discussed at the beginning, but how do we know that our hormones are returning back to normal? Because there is a certain normal amount that your hormones are going to be topsy-turvy before you get your cycles back, before we have what we call return of fertility. So the easiest way to figure out really what the F is going on is to do basal body temperature tracking. I talk about this a lot for all stages of life, except menopause, but this is really, really helpful postpartum. The reason why is because when we are tracking our basal body temperature, we're tracking your basal body temperature. But what happens with ovulation is when you ovulate, you make more progesterone. And when you make more progesterone, your body temperature goes up. And when your body temperature goes up, we can see that on the chart if you're taking your basal body temperature every morning. And that's really cool, because once we have what's called a temp shift to a higher temperature, and that temperature is sustained and it stays high, then we can confirm ovulation, and we know, hey, you've dropped an egg out. Once you drop an egg and you've ovulated your first time postpartum, then, depending on how long your luteal phases tend to be, we know that you're going to have a period sometime soon, because ovulation always precedes a true period. So a lot of women will ask me, like, how do I know when my period is going to start happening? How can I plan for that? What does that look like? And really the best way is to get a basal body temperature, a thermometer, checker, whatever it is, and to actually temp every single day. You can get ones that you do every morning. You can also do a wearable, which makes it so easy. And you guys know that I'm like a super fan of Temp Drop. If you guys haven't heard of the Temp Drop device, it is a wearable basal body temperature tracker that you wear on your arm, and it slides up to this area. I have a couple videos on it if you have never heard of it. But it helps get a really accurate reading, which is helpful when you are waking up at all times of night. Gets us an accurate temperature. But one thing that is also relevant for this conversation is women are often like, okay, well, I'm exclusively breastfeeding. Let's just assume that you're exclusively breastfeeding. I'm exclusively breastfeeding, so that means I can't get pregnant. And that's actually not true. The reason why it's not true is because we don't know when your return of fertility is going to happen unless we track it with the basal body temperature tracking. There's no real other way to tell. I mean, you can look at your body for different signs and symptoms, like your cervical mucus changing, like any PMS symptoms coming back, but there's really no way to know. So what's really common, and this is why babies can be born so close together, is a woman will experience return of fertility, which is when her first period is going to happen. Or I should say, she experiences her first ovulation, and she and her partner are having sex, and that first egg that gets ovulated gets fertilized, and then she never has a period. And then, she starts getting pregnancy symptoms, and then she says, oh my gosh, how can I be pregnant? I never got my first period. And it's because when you ovulate, then, about 10 to 14 days later, then you're going to have a cycle. So if you are having unprotected sex and you don't do any sort of tracking, you can fertilize that first egg that you drop and then miss your first period. That was going to be the thing that's telling us that, hey, your hormones are back on track and you are ovulating again. So if you are someone that's exclusively breastfeeding, the key is to either track or use some sort of barrier method or perfect withdrawal, if that works for you, in order to prevent pregnancy. Because just because you have high prolactin levels, and high prolactin levels when you're breastfeeding tend to suppress hormones, that doesn't mean that your period that doesn't mean that you won't ovulate at some point and then your period come back. Like we just don't know when that's going to happen. So we have to track for it. So basal body temperature tracking allows us to catch that first ovulation, and then that first period is your return of fertility. Most women have return of fertility around 6 months. So by that point, your breastfeeding rhythm is generally pretty established. Or if you're not breastfeeding, then we're taking that suppressive effect away from the other hormones. So when we're having really consistent breastfeeding and there's not a ton of growth spurts with the baby that really commonly happen when they're brand new in the first couple of months, then your body gets into a little bit of a rhythm with how much prolactin it's making. And it can allow some of those hormones to come up, like estrogen, to actually have because when you ovulate, your brain has to tell your ovaries to do that. You need a certain amount of estrogen for that signal to happen. And if you're not having that suppressive effect of the prolactin, then your hormones can kind of come up without you necessarily realizing it, unless you're really tracking different signs and symptoms, like cervical mucus, but that's not the case for everybody. And, then when your hormones come up, that can signal ovulation, and then you can get your first period. So 6 months is pretty typical, but it can be longer, it can be shorter. But if you are a person that definitely wants to space out your babies, or this is your last baby, definitely be wise when it comes to sex with your partner so that you don't have any surprises or Irish twins, unless of course you want that, which is sometimes fun. But I recommend several years in between babies if possible, so that we can get nutrient stores up for mom so we can make healthier babies. But that's a whole other discussion. So we talked about 6 weeks getting back to normal is not typical. It's kind of a myth. Don't put pressure on yourself, so I don't want to spend time on that. I talked a little bit about herbs and how I use herbs. I usually do a tea. I often will use this tea called Joy Tea by Rosemary Gladstar, who's an author and herbalist. And you can make that formula, and you can take that pretty proactively, like right once you have the baby. So it can help with that 3-day to like 2-week massive hormone drop that happens, so that you don't feel as frazzled and like your world is crashing down. So very helpful. Last 2 points. Acne. You can take herbs to support acne and help your liver to clear things out. So the best way to do this is to eat liver supportive foods. So this is things like cruciferous vegetables and burdock root and everything that's green and orange and leafy, and has beta carotene in it. These are things like fibers and chia seeds. These are things like garlic, onions, all really, really helpful. Cruciferous vegetables are probably the best. But I often will have women take a little bit of milk thistle, because milk thistle is actually decently good for your milk supply, and it's a very safe hepatoprotective herb. So it's very liver protective, and it won't harm your breast milk. It won't be negative on baby, and it's really, really gentle. But milk thistle supports lots of other mechanisms in the body, so I just love it. It's great for the liver. So if acne is really cramping your style, you can loop some of that in. But if you can't do anything internally for whatever reason, definitely get on a skincare plan, because as baby comes into the life, sometimes self-care goes out the window. So make sure that you are, exfoliating 2 to 3 times a week gently, and that you're doing cleansers, whatever cleanser you use, make sure it's a gentle one, twice a day, and that you're moisturizing, you're using serums as needed. And then the last thing that is the best is acupuncture for postpartum. So you might feel like you don't have time, but you can find practitioners that can come to your house. You can take an hour or 2 of you time away from the baby. That's actually really good for you. It's good for baby. So I would highly recommend acupuncture. Once a week for 6 weeks up to 2 months is really, really effective for pretty much whatever symptom we're really trying to improve. So acupuncture, you can even get benefits going once every other week, but it's really best to go every single week. Some people even go twice a week, which is awesome. But if you have an acupuncturist in your area that you love, use them. They are so knowledgeable, and acupuncture can help your hormones come back on track. They can help your mood. It can help with healing, like your physical body. It can help your mood. It can help your sleep. It can help your cognition. So don't forget to loop in acupuncture. I'm going to take some questions here. A couple of you guys have really stuck with me this whole night. So if you have any, put them in the chat. But I really want to impress upon you guys as we're wrapping up is that, you have certain hormones that are dropping off immediately after labor and certain ones that are going up that are going to affect your experience as a person postpartum. And some things that you experience postpartum are completely natural hormone imbalance signs and symptoms, but there's a certain line for a lot of those symptoms that I talked about in this video that you have to monitor to see if they're going on too long, because a little bit of fluctuation is normal because all your hormones just dropped off. But when symptoms are severe and life disruptive and they go on for too long, then that's not okay. So you definitely need to talk to your provider and get some support. We also talked about signs of hormone imbalance postpartum. We talked about how to support nutrition, sleep, how to support your adrenal glands, how to take herbs. We talked about basal body temperature tracking, which I highly recommend, you guys. This is the kicker for helping us find when your return to fertility is without getting surprised. Taking 6 weeks to get back to normal or more, because the 6-week mark is kind of a myth. I talked about acne a little bit and acupuncture. So thank you all for joining. This has been so fun. I hope it was good for you. If you guys have any questions, put them in there. I think there's definitely some lag too, because sometimes they all come in at the same time. But give me a heart if this is awesome. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Dr. Megan Brining, and I do these Instagram lives at 5 p.m. Pacific every single week. This is my way of connecting with you guys and giving back a little bit for the people that can't see me. So let's see. We have a question. Thanks. At what part of postpartum should we get our hormones and vitamins/minerals checked out? Also, what would you say ashwagandha, it's a hard spell, beneficial? So ashwagandha is one of those ones we have to stop until you're done breastfeeding, I believe. I don't believe it's safe during breastfeeding. That's why I often have people do the Phosphatidylserine first, or just in general, because it has a similar action to ashwagandha. But what time should we get our hormones and vitamin minerals checked out? So the timing of testing postpartum really depends on what's going on. I mean, if you are someone that feels good and is looking to optimize, I mean, I would check things out anywhere from 6 months to a year. If you are really struggling, like, you know, at the 3-month mark, I would do it then. You know, the timing on that is so individual. I don't have like an actual time frame that I tell people, like, you should for sure get it checked out at this time, because it depends on when baby's having their growth spurts, depending on how you're recovering, what's going on with your home life situation, if you've had other stressors, moves, that type of thing. But, you know, for someone like you that has a pretty good support system and you stay pretty on top of stuff, you know, probably that 6-month mark, because when we test things before the 6-month mark, I find it to be like, you know, unless you're really struggling, I find it to be a little early, because your body's still recovering, especially if you're somebody that has had a C-section. Like, that is major abdominal surgery, you guys. We tend to laugh it off as like, oh yeah, I had a C-section, and we tend to have this idea that C-sections are easier than vaginal births, and they're like both equally really hard. So yeah, we can't minimize those C-section gals. Can you spell that supplement, please? So it's Phosphatidylserine. So let me write this down. Phosphatidylserine. Can you guys see this? Phosphatidylserine. Jaro, which I'm not affiliated with, they have a pretty good phosphatidylserine supplement called PS100. You can dose it anywhere between the 100 to 400 milligram range, and it is really awesome. I mean, I've seen this helps, that supplement helps so many different postpartum women, because I mean, your world, while it is so joyous because now you have your new love in your arms, it's just the phosphatidylserine helps all of those hormonal pathways. So it's really great. Really great questions, you guys. Thanks for asking. And you're welcome for the knowledge bomb. Yeah, thanks. Typing out the supplement. Okay, I'm making sure that I got everybody. Last call for questions, and then I'll let you guys go. And if you guys missed this, it's going to be on my YouTube, of course, and it will be on Instagram TV. And let's see, next week we are going to be doing another talk about hormones. I can't remember what it is, but it is on my Instagram page. So definitely tune in. Fun month, this month of April. And thanks for coming, you guys. I'll see you next week.